In the season of Easter, as we're hearing these beautiful stories in the scripture, what we start to hear in the Acts of the Apostles is how the early church starts to spread. So I want to do a little series on evangelization and the body. What's physically going on in the evangelization process? In the book Divine Renovation, which talks about the renewal of Catholic parishes, it talks about the dynamic that historically we've asked people to behave so that they can believe and then belong. But the idea that when people show up at our church, we fundamentally sort of expect them to already be behaving, living the faith and not doing things that offend us. But in the evangelization process, typically people have to belong first. And by belonging, they come to believe. And after they believe, they start behaving.
Right.
So the actual process of bringing people into the church who aren't already culturally Christian is the opposite of what oftentimes our expectation is, right? Who's that person in the pew over there with, they don't look the way I think they should look, and they don't move the way I think they should move, and they don't do things the church agrees with. That's great. That's what we want. We want people coming to the church who need Christ. And this process of transformation actually reflects the nature of the human brain. And the theory of the lateralization of the brain, this is from an important book called The Other Half of Church. It says, when we neglect right brain development in our discipleship, we ignore the side of the brain that specializes in character formation. Left brain discipleship emphasizes beliefs, doctrines, willpower, and strategies, but neglects right brain loving attachments, joy, emotional development, and identity. Ignoring right brain emotional development creates Christians who believe in God's love, but have difficulty experiencing it in daily life, especially during distress. In a left brain community, we are taught Christian doctrine, but the doctrine has difficulty showing up in our instantaneous reactions. And the basic idea here, the proposal of the book, is that we need to become whole-brain Christians.
Oh, good luck with that.
We don't want to be a half-brain church. We want to be a whole-brain church. And so the Catholic Church, I think, over the decades, sort of, the pendulum swings, right?
Yeah,
Right, it does.
There's been decades where we're sort of full in on the loving attachment, sit around and sing Kumbaya.
Right.
Everyone can do whatever they want,
Right.
but nobody knows exactly what they should do.
Right.
They're sort of empowered to live the gospel, but not given the direction of the church's teachings.
Right.
And other times we swing the pendulum in the other direction, and we beat people over the head with the catechism and the Bible, and that's good stuff in the church's doctrines. But then people kind of tend to live these double lives where they show up to church and they act like they got it all together, but back home, their lives are still a mess. They're in addictions and struggles and everything else. And maybe you can relate to this personally. I know I do.
Right.
So the reality we have to live with is that our bonds are above our ideals, and our ideals are above our skills.
Wow.
Meaning, in order to live the gospel, we need to have the right beliefs, but in order to have the right beliefs, we need to have the right relationships. So what does all this mean for evangelization? It means that there needs to be a deep personal encounter at the core of the transformation process, at the core of the evangelization process. So when we're out there trying to share the gospel, I think of what's the delivery method? What's the pill you take to catch the gospel?
Right.
Well, the thing that gives people the gospel is people. You're the delivery method. You're the pill they need to swallow. You're the way that it gets into their lives. But what this means is we need to live with a certain, I call it relational density. There's a moment in every relationship where there's a shift that happens we don't often notice, where we go from being people who know each other to being people who to belong to one another. Those people that we know, that we're acquaintances with, that because when you're having conversations, you have to think of what you're going to say. Right? There's a layer of sort of filtering and self knowledge where we're not really just being ourselves.
Right.
Then there's a point in every relationship where that layer fades and we just start spontaneously being around each other. Right. And once we take that step with someone, we enter into the space, I think, where the gospel can truly be spread, where we have this kind of right brain transformation. So I think a lot of our churches struggle today because we don't have enough relational density. We're communities that live on the surface with a sort of superficial connection to one another, but we don't become best friends with one another.
Right.
People are still best friends with their college buddies or the people they work with or the people they watch their sports team with.
Right.
But in order to have churches that transform people's lives, we need to start living together. We need to start transforming each other by being around one another. Because that's what Jesus did. When he had to transform the apostles, they went and they lived together for 3 years. And we see that transformation happen, especially in the apostle John, the apostle whom Jesus loved, right? John's identity becomes Jesus' love. And that enables him to ultimately be super courageous when we look at the passion narratives and how he follows Jesus in his passion. So when we're thinking about evangelization, we could be guided by Pope Francis in Evangelii Gaudium. He says, the gospel tells us constantly to run the risk of face-to-face encounter with others, with their physical presence, which challenges us, with their pain and their pleas, with their joy, which infects us in our close and continuous interaction. True faith in the incarnate Son of God is inseparable from self-giving, from membership in the community, and from service, from reconciliation with others. The Son of God, by becoming flesh, summoned us to a revolution of tenderness. So the evangelization process begins with becoming a people, both becoming a people in our parish, becoming true friends with the people we worship with, so we can be transformed to live the gospel, but then also becoming a people with those whom we need to share the gospel with, truly coming to know them, coming to have them know us, investing in their lives, becoming really friends with them in that process. And the thing is that when we have close friends that we don't share ideals with, there'll be a constant nagging in our mind. We naturally, as humans, we're sort of tribal people, just biologically. So we want to naturally conform with the people we belong to. And oftentimes we find ourselves maybe even believing things that don't make any sense,
right,
because our ideals are shaped by the people who we love. And so when we enter those love relationships with people, it really drives their mind toward the gospel, not in a manipulative way, but just in a way that is frankly compatible with human nature and God's design for the body.
True.
Two things, Andrew. One thing that came to mind as you were talking is the Myers-Briggs temperament, this thinking, feeling kind of thing. So left brain, right brain kind of stuff. Depending on when I take the test, I'm both. But that makes decisions hard because you've got this rational piece and then you've got your feelings. Is that maybe a struggle within the same kind of struggle within an institutional church?
Yeah, definitely. We have a toolbox in our neurobiology, and these different tools are used by us at different moments. Like when we're in distress, when we're dysregulated, it's that right brain emotional side that actually runs faster, that's more in control. Or when we have time to plan things out and sort of think through the problem, that's more that left brain side. Okay. So this is what that passage was referring to. Right. If we want to make the right decision in instantaneous moments of distress, we need the right brain development, the ideals and the relationships that form us.
Thank you for listening to Becoming Gift. You can catch the show live every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Eastern on Ave Maria Radio. You can also find my long-form podcasts, discussions, and presentations on the Physically Spiritual podcast. Subscribe to my Substack at becominggift.com to find more from me, and don't forget to like and subscribe.